she's staring at.
Okay, next up we have Mega Man 3, released in the tail end of 1992 for Game Boy. This is a return to form after the misfire that was Mega Man 2, bringing back the crew responsible for the development of the first game, Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge, and wisely retaining their services for 2 more games. Mega Man 3 provided the polish that the second game lacked, and also refined the formula to be followed by the remaining 2 sequels in this Game Boy sub-series, and also 7 and 8 on the consoles, but we already touched those, we don't need to go back to those anyways. As per usual, we begin with the traditional stage select, pitting the Blue Bomber against the 4 remaining bosses from Mega Man 3 who didn't feature in the previous game. And much like the previous game, the stages are more akin to remixed versions of the NES levels, with some deviations here and there. Once you clear the first set, you'll play a quick Wily level before returning to the stage select screen. This time it's 4 slots occupied by 4 bosses from Mega Man 4, and then that leads to another short level that will eventually pit you against the second Mega Man killer, Punk, who poses more of a threat than the corrupted Mega Man from the future of the previous game. The limited space doesn't help matters much either, but defeat him and you get the Screw Crusher, which is used to defeat Dr. Wily in the game's final level, where all your skills are put to the test in this ultimate challenge. Right, so gameplay in Mega Man 3 is up to Mega Man 4 NES standards. We now have our Mega Buster Charge Shot, and its pulsating sound that practically kills the music as a result might actually be more obnoxious than the NES charge sound actually. You only have 2 Rush accessories this time around. Rush Coil, gained from defeating Snake Man, works as it always did, and Rush Jet, gained from defeating Dustman, and this Rush Jet is the forward-moving variety, which is bad enough for some people who prefer the free-roaming Mega Man 3 variant, but also this version gives you no vertical control whatsoever, which means if you don't position Rush at the right height and he runs into a solid object, yep. Oh, and Eddie Flip-Top shows up at certain points to drop you an item, and if you want something else, just exit the room and walk back in hopes of getting another item, so long as you don't pick up the item, of course. It's a neat little trick that works in all the classics, I guess. Control in Mega Man 3 generally feels tighter compared to the previous game, and movement no longer has that weird looseness that felt off in Mega Man 2. Though it's largely responsive, there are instances where control will feel stuck whenever you're on shaky ground, or on gimmicky platformers that will drop you like a rock, man. It's not a common occurrence, but every once in a while it could lead to some problems. The game also suffers from bouts of slowdown that occur whenever there's a bit too much going on, and unfortunately this would plague the rest of the Game Boy run. Also, enjoy that nice simple password grid while you can, because the next 2 games would go for a slightly more convoluted setup for its password system. But that's for down the road. Despite a couple hiccups, Mega Man 3 largely sticks to the landing and feels as consistent with the usual Mega Man 8-bit offerings as possible with the hardware. The overall difficulty is a little higher than before, but nothing that would overly frustrate the average Mega player. Master weapons operate as they did in their source games, and some have slight tweaks, such as Skull Barrier protecting you for a couple hits before fading out, making it a slightly more useful shield weapon compared to its original appearance. The weapon you get from defeating Punk, the Screw Crusher, exists mostly to beat the final Wily machine with, but has more practical use than Anchor's Mirror Buster, and is a tad more useful than Quint's Pogo Stick. But that's a horse I'm done beating on, so let's move on. Mega Man 3 looks like Mega Man, which isn't much of a surprise if you played enough Mega Man in this 8-bit format. The overall sprite work is a touch better quality here than in the previous game. Mega Man and other smaller enemies made the transition from NES to Game Boy format without a hitch. Some larger foes have seen a bit of shrinkage, but there are still occasional large threats to deal with, and these look fine. Levels aren't too bad looking either. Some, like Snake Man's jungle setting, is a step above what you had on the NES, which was just a scaly background, while others, like the Mega Man 4 stages situated in Wily Castle, feel a tad generic, but have enough elements of the source stage to feel somewhat distinct. There's also a couple cutscenes here and there that progress the limited story forward, which is a bit of a nice touch. Sound has also seen a considerable improvement over the previous two games, the last game especially. This is the first time where the sound effects come closest to emulating the original NES sound effects, and while some sound better than others, the overall quality is still pretty good. The pulsing sound of the Mega Buster charge is not pleasant, and perhaps even more grating than the NES sound, which is a shame because the music here is quite solid. Obviously, a lot of tunes come from the NES games, and they're more or less straight conversions rather than interesting remixes, but the few original tracks in the game are pretty damn slick. Overall, Mega Man 3 picks up Mega Man 2's slack and not only corrects the missteps of its predecessor, but makes enough refinements to the formula in order to create the best handheld Mega Man experience up to that point, only to be superseded by two sequels that expand on this game's base even further. Slowdown, minor flickering, and some uneven difficulty are the only real sticking points to this game, but otherwise, third time's the charm that delivers the good in all the right places. All in all, Mega Man 3 is a perfectly acceptable slice of that classic Mega Pie.